Hi everyone, my name is Julia Brandenstein. I'm the campus lead of Stony Brook's team of the Up to Us campus competition. It is incredibly exciting that we continue to share with you our message of fiscal sustainability through our podcast with Dishing with Democracy. And today we are incredibly honored to have on one of our Nassau County legislators of District 16, Legislator Arnie Drucker, and we want to thank him so much for coming out and introduce him right now. So, Legislator Drucker, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Good morning, Julia. It really is an honor to be appearing on your podcast. I'm a big supporter and admirer of you and all the things that you've been doing. So this is great. I'm really looking forward to it.
I mean, thank you. Like throughout the years, watching your work and what you do has been incredibly important. And as someone on Long Island who's kind of supported the fiscal sustainability of their own constituents, we kind of thought it was incredibly important to take your perspective on some of these issues. So, to kind of start out on the topic of fiscal sustainability, a lot of us understand a really big intersection between a lot of social justice issues that we've been seeing and fiscal sustainability. So, Long Island is an enormous green energy hub currently. So, do you think investing in renewable energy currently will be a step in the right direction for fiscal sustainability?
Well, absolutely, Julia. I mean, fiscal sustainability is tied into renewable energy. And, we are in the midst of a crisis, global warming and problems with our environment, climate change. These are major issues that we have to address now. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. And by doing so, we will help our economy. We will help everyone to achieve a much better situation. And I'm all in favor of that. Anything we can do to reduce our carbon footprint, reduce our dependence on combustible energy, and get into some more renewable energy sources, whether it's wind turbines or solar panels, electric cars, electric charging stations. These are all things that we need to accomplish immediately. We have to be working in that direction. I think that there's a lot of the elected officials in Washington and even on our state level are cognizant of that problem, and we're trying to move in that direction. I know I am, as a local elected official here in Nassau County. I'm trying to do that as well.
And that's incredibly important. I think there's been so many initiatives that you've kind of taken up which promoted that goal that we'll talk about a little bit later. But kind of talking about the immediacy of this issue, I feel like a lot of college students currently don't really acknowledge their role in a fiscally sustainable future because the topic of finance can sometimes be hard to approach for people in this age group. So, what are some recommendations that you would make to young people personally regarding finances and fiscal responsibility?
Well, I would advise three words: save, save, save. So it is really important that we all, young children and young people in school and in college, learn to budget themselves properly, learn how to save in a proper way. Um, you know, I would recommend that you do away with credit cards. I think that credit cards are incredibly tempting but dangerous. I would say use debit cards if you can, because at least you're not incurring a recurring interest problem with these credit cards that charge 24 and 25% interest. You never really reduce the principal balance. You're just paying interest, and that's a really good example of poor fiscal sustainability. So I would just recommend that people live within their means, spend, what's necessary, and save what you can.
Yeah. And I think that's incredibly important right now. And still kind of going off of that topic, there's so little education right now, especially for younger populations, excuse me, regarding fiscal education. So what are ways that you think we can better implement fiscal education in K through 12 schools?
Well, I think that schools are doing a better job. I mean, I know that in my district, most of the schools have DECA. I'm sure you're familiar with DECA, which is a
Yeah.
business oriented club, sort of, and it invites students to compete with other schools and learning how to deal in a business setting, to be entrepreneurial, how to be wise in terms of ideas and how you produce, promote them. But I think that it's very important that at a young age, uh, students are taught about our market, our economy, and what propels our economy, and how spending and what savings and what our inflation rate, what role that plays on everything. And we can start that education at a young age so children have an idea of how our government works and how interest rates, for example, are affecting our economy. And we can start that at a young age. And I think, I was when I went to school, we didn't really teach that. I had to learn it when I was in college. So I think we can start it at a younger age. And I think a lot of the schools are recognizing the need to do that. So I'm very active in my district with promoting the organizations in the schools that foster that type of education.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is very, very true, that there's so many topics that often go unaddressed when talking about fiscal sustainability and finance, and definitely addressing those topics could be very influential. So, as you were just mentioning, there's a lot of actions that you've taken as legislator at this topic. Is there one particular initiative, or just could you discuss some of the ways that you're especially proud of that you've promoted fiscal sustainability and knowledge about these topics within your district or within your actions as legislator?
Well, in my district, what we just had last weekend was Earth Day, and every year I've been promoting uh, overtures and initiatives in my community to help pick up garbage and just be conscious of our environment. I'm very active in water conservation and some of the organizations that promote the uh, the saving of our aquifers in Long Island, because our aquifers, we are a sole source. Uh, our aquifers are the sole source provider of water in Long Island. We don't get our water shipped from any other place. And right now, our aquifers are being compromised by soil penetration of nitrogen and other emerging contaminants. And so I'm very much focused on what efforts we can make to ensure that our water system is protected and we have safe drinking water. I've also been involved in trying to get our Nassau County to switch to electric vehicles, the fleet of all Nassau County vehicles. I'm trying to get that to be mandated, that it be all electric vehicles or at least hybrid vehicles going forward, that we have more electric charging stations around the county so that people can be more apt to purchase electric vehicles. And, even on a smaller scale, I'm promoting that we do away with paper, with payroll and salary payments and checks, that everything should be done online with automatic deposits and things like that. So I'm very much involved in trying to reduce our carbon footprint in any ways we can. And every single person can do their part as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important intersection of what you're discussing, kind of ecological impact of our existence on this planet, and definitely how that intersects with increasing costs of fuel, what it takes to purchase combustible fuel sources.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very important, and especially even in Long Island right now, preserving those resources that you've been talking about is very important. So kind of jumping into kind of that deeper part of fiscal sustainability and what that really means on a national scale, definitely for younger populations, this is a pretty pressing question that a lot of people don't discuss. Does our national debt matter? And if so, or if not, what should be our national priorities?
Well, our national debt matters, not so much as that we're feeling it on a daily basis, but you do feel it because it's a ripple effect. So if our national debt is high, that means our government has to pay it back. And
Mm-hmm.
how do we pay it back? Well, they pay it back with taxes. So taxes filter down to the local level as well. So we need to find ways to reduce our national debt. And I think the current administration is trying real hard to do that. And you do that by several ways. And if we can increase manufacturing in this country, reduce our foreign manufacturing and the expenses that the taxes that we pay overseas. And if we can do more consolidation here on a local level and even on the national level, we can consolidate our expenses and reduce them. I think that promotes a lowering of the national debt. And by lowering the national debt, I think the cost of living would be affected too. You'd find inflation rates to be well under control. Interest rates would be lower, promoting more opportunities for people to invest either in purchasing houses, buying businesses, things like that. And that promotes our economy and increases the standard of living for everyone.
Yeah. And I think that's incredibly important, all those points that you're addressing right now. And you kind of just, I guess, answer this secondary part of our question that as a local representative, do you feel that there has been sufficient action within Congress on issues relating to fiscal sustainability?
Well, I think on the state level here, we're trying real hard. I mean, I for one am very concerned with the very high taxes that we pay here on Long Island,
Mhm.
and that's been a real dagger in all of us. And so when I was hearing in my legislative capacity from a lot of seniors who are retiring after many years of working, and it was difficult for them to continue to stay here on Long Island and pay those high taxes, and and still have to pay for the upkeep of their houses. I was listening to people who say they were interested in downsizing, perhaps staying on Long Island but moving to a condominium if they could afford it, but they were concerned about the taxes. So we sat down with our local officials here in Nassau County, and then we then sat down with our state representatives, legislators, and we were able to get a new law passed last year that made it easier for seniors to transition to a new construction condominium, or even people who wanted to make substantial improvements to their homes without having to get killed in increased and higher taxes because of a higher assessment. So I've been very conscious of making it easier for our people to sustain themselves here in Long Island by making sure that we can keep our taxes under control. And I think that with increased people staying here on Long Island and not having to leave, that helps our schools and our school districts. And when they have to pass their budgets, perhaps they won't have to increase their budgets as much, and we can kind of keep a more stable level of our school taxes.
Yeah, and I think all those issues are incredibly important. Listening to your constituency is incredibly important, and seeing that you're doing that is incredible. So, um, obviously, both of us understand that issues like fiscal sustainability and anything relating to economics can change very quickly with any situation that might be occurring nationally. And one of the most pressing issues we've been facing within the last 2 years is COVID. So, how do you think that COVID has impacted the ability of young people to understand the financial system and their prospects for the future?
Well, it's a great question, Julia, because what we have experienced over the past 2 years has been transformative in every single way that you can possibly imagine. COVID has changed the way we work, the way we live, the way we go to school, the way we dress, the way we travel. Everything in our lives have changed because of COVID. And what that does is it shows how fragile our economy can be, our lifestyle can be when we were shut down, and look at the devastation it caused to local businesses, to people who lost their jobs, to housing challenges. We go on and on. So what this has done is it's made us understand that our fiscal sustainability is right there at the forefront of everything, and we have to be conscious of it. So I think what you've seen is a lot of businesses and schools, in the beginning, working schools being working remotely, businesses working remotely, so that you didn't have to actually go to an office and travel. And I think that has made businesses, made schools fiscally sustainable. And I think that's very, very important. Government as well. And that has this pandemic has changed that. And I'm certain that we will for years and years and years, generations, we're going to talk about this and recognize that it changed everything in our society and around the world. So,
Yeah. And I think that's an incredibly astute point. And as we kind of move into wrap up our conversation, understanding the impact of issues like that are so important, and keeping those cognizant when thinking about our future is important. So, kind of just a takeaway message after discussing all of that and all these incredibly pressing issues. What is just one reason, or kind of give us just one wrap up message of why do you believe it's important to emphasize the importance of a financially sustainable future to college students?
I think you as college students represent our future. And thank goodness, Julia, you and up to us organizations are stepping up, because we need young leaders like yourselves to recognize the challenges that we face. If we bury our heads in the sand and don't recognize that we are heading down a slippery slope, if we allow our economy to continue to go out of control, it's going to portend very, very difficult lifestyle changes. And I'm very concerned about the shrinking of our middle class, because the middle class is what was the backbone of our democracy, of our country for 250 years. And if we have a fiscally unsustainable government and country, the middle class is not going to be able to survive. You're only going to have the very, very wealthy, and then you're going to have a population that's poor and underserved and underrepresented. And that's dangerous, because we can't sustain ourselves with that. So I'm grateful for you and your peers for stepping up and trying to have a conversation about these issues, because your discussing them is going to get the attention of our elected leaders, and we can make changes. We can effectuate change by listening to the young voices as well. And I'm so grateful that you're taking the time, and you guys are engaged in a dialogue about this important issue about fiscal sustainability in our government, because we need to tackle this issue head on. We can't keep putting it off.
Yeah. I think that final point that you bring up is so important. And it's actually one of the main points we talked about with other elected officials, that the goal of this podcast and the goal of our campaign was to initiate conversations about fiscal sustainability in order to start that dialogue with others, include a variety of opinions on the issue in order to deliver that to college students to really express the importance of issues like fiscal sustainability. So, Legislator Drucker, after everything we've talked about today, I want to thank you so much for coming out on our podcast. And before we wrap up, if there's anything that you want to tell people that you're working on, any social media that people can follow you on, definitely get it out there.
Well, right now, one of the things I recently filed legislation to pass a resolution to make Harry Chapin Day in June, because of now one of the things we talked about earlier, Julia, was the pandemic has shown a light on food insecurity and food scarcity here in Long Island. We don't like to recognize that, but there is a real problem with that. And Harry Chapin, 40 years ago or more, was very much aware of that problem and did what he could to help in that endeavor. So I filed legislation to have a countywide holiday on where we donate food and in the food pantries, and we just focus on eliminating food scarcity and food insecurity here on Long Island. I've also involved in I passed legislation establishing an anti-Semitism task force to combat anti-Semitism and conduct public hearings and to find out the root causes of anti-Semitism here in Nassau County, and if we have to pass legislation to that effect. So we're in the midst of meetings with the task force. I've also filed legislation, hoping I get that passed, on amending our human rights charter for punishing Asian hate. So we've seen an uptick in all of that discrimination and hatred against Asians, and so I filed legislation about that. I'm very, very much involved in protecting the quality of our life here, and making sure that people who are underserved and underrepresented have their voices heard.
Yeah. So all of that is incredibly important, especially in the Long Island area. Definitely where Stony Brook is, all of that is still incredibly impertinent. So, Legislator Drucker, we want to thank you so much for coming on our podcast today and discussing all of these incredibly important issues. And once again, to everyone watching, remember, it is up to us. And thank you so much for watching our podcast series throughout our campus competition. It has been a pleasure working with Up to Us. And we are so excited to see what other campus teams can do in the future. Thank you all.
Thank you, Julia.